Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum and Donald Trump butt heads in headlines this week, right? And everybody's like, oh, Claudia's such a fucking asshole. She won't let Central and South American migrants be deported into Mexico. And how horrible, how horrible. There's a whole history behind that. For starters, a few points though. Point number one is Donald Trump is trying to deport everybody on military planes. And given the fact that the last few years, the Trump administration and all their little fucking hooligans who've been running around talking about how they want to invade Mexico and military operations in Mexico, Claudia was like, fuck no, not only are you guys not deporting everybody into Mexico, but you're definitely not doing it in military planes flying over Mexican airspace. They want to use military planes because you can fit more deportees into a military plane than you can onto a commercial flight, and it's cheaper, but they're less fuel efficient. So even if they wanted to go all the way down to Central and South America, they still have to make pit stops in Mexico to refuel, I'm sure. So that's not fucking happening. So that's number one. That's the first point. Second point is, before we continue on with the migrants, I want to tell you guys about what the Mexican deportees are going to get once they get into Mexico and how Mexico's preparing to receive all of them. So the Mexican deportees, when they get back to Mexico and they get dumped on the other side of the border, say TJ, Juarez, anywhere else, all along the border, there's a ton of shelters. There's shelters that are ready to house thousands and process thousands of deportees. They're going to get a small stipend and they're going to get transport to their hometowns back there. Once they get to their hometowns, they get full access to all the social programs that we've been talking about in all our videos, whether it be the agriculture, farming ones, which, we haven't done a video on, and also the benefits from the medical treatments. They are going to get benefits from the jobs programs. They're going to get pensions. There's already like thousands of jobs in every state that's waiting for the deportees to come in, because the deportees, for years of being migrants in the U.S., the migrants in the U.S. are seen in Mexico by this administration and the previous administration as national heroes. They've been sending so much money back that they are the ones that during all these corrupt administrations have been able to keep our families afloat. So the bare minimum that we could do is try and give them a good homecoming when they are forced to come back, and try to give them access to as many of the resources as we have available for them. So that's that part. The second part is going back to the Central and South American migrants, is Claudia learned the lessons that were taught to her by the previous administration, AMLO, and she's avoiding those same exact pitfalls. Now, the previous administration had to deal with Trump for a few years, and then had to deal with Biden for a few years. And the agreements that happened with the US and Mexico was, Mexico said, okay, cool. If you guys remember, there was a massive caravans that were coming all the time from Central and South America, and they were getting jammed up at the border, and it was fucking horrible for everybody involved, right? So the one thing that the Mexican president said is like, okay, what we're gonna do is we're gonna give everybody work permits, and we're gonna give everybody the ability to stay. And they came to an agreement with the US where the US was like, we want them to, if they're going to apply for asylum, we want them to apply for asylum and wait for us in Mexico, which wasn't the thing before. Before, you had to be in the US to apply for asylum. But this was kind of like a measure to try and mitigate and to try and diffuse some of the situation. And Mexico was like, all right, cool, we can do that, we'll do this, we'll do this. In exchange, what we need from you guys is we need you guys to help us address the root causes of migration, which is the lack of jobs, the lack of access to resources. So nationwide, what we're doing is we're doing our agriculture program that we talked about. We're going to extend that out into Guatemala. And also, we are building our Mayan train. So we're going to run a train route into Guatemala, and we're going to give them a bunch of trains. And that's exactly what happened. It would be a much bigger program and much more developed, but as usual, the US doesn't do shit that it says it's going to do when it comes to helping people. It ended up stiffing everybody at the end, and it ended up doing none of that. Not only did the US not pay for any of this shit, but then the US immediately went off and started a civil war in Haiti, and then started choking the fuck out of Venezuela. And everybody's always like, oh yeah, socialism doesn't work because look at Venezuela. Fuck out of here. Socialism doesn't work in Venezuela because everywhere socialism pops up, the US is right there to choke the shit out of them and fund militias and try and overthrow and bribe the fuck out of everybody and put strangleholds economically and militarily and all this other shit. That's why it doesn't work. But that's not the point. The point is, nobody creates more migrants than the US. Nobody on the face of this globe creates more migrants than the US. From Syria to El Salvador, from Peru to Palestine. Nobody funds more dictators. Nobody trains more terrorists. Nobody creates more fascists. Nobody arms more assholes than the United States. Whoever you think is second place is not even remotely close to the amount of death and destruction that the United States brings upon the globe every day of the year for decades. So the bare minimum that the United States can do as the CEOs of capitalism is take in its refugees. Absolute bare minimum, because those refugees and those countries that it's been obliterating and it's been exploited for all its resources are the countries that are paying the real cost of capitalism. Everyone's like, oh, capitalism, this is the benefits of capitalism. I don't want to hear about the benefits of capitalism. What's the real cost of capitalism? That's the real cost of capitalism. And that's a price that they've been paying. That's a price that Mexico and Central and South America has been paying for fucking decades.